welcome to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio, and today is Friday, and it's September the 22nd, 2023, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us, and we would love to hear your comments and questions, because that makes this dial in, and then I'm going to read another response from the lady that we answered her question day before yesterday and then added to it yesterday, and she wrote back a little more information. So I'll wait till he gets on, and then I'll read that. But we're glad that you're with us today. To find her email while I'm talking. Multitask. Okay. So, Susan, I'm glad that you asked him to read that book. It's actually, I'm enjoying it tremendously. And I wasn't real sure if that's the book that he was reading from, so I'm glad to know that. I'll have to get a hold of it. And a link in the notes for today, too. So, we're waiting on Michael. 563-999-3581 and press 1. And I had gotten a note from Michael Teddy day before yesterday that the link wasn't working for the download, but I got that fixed. So if you're one of those who had been trying to get that download or to listen to that show, it is now fixed, so you can go back out and click on it. And I appreciate him and everybody else for letting me know when you run across something that's not working on the website so that I can attend to it. So if you do run across something, please let me know. And see if Michael is with us yet. We do, we really appreciate the questions and things because that leads us in direction to talk about. And welcome, Michael. And I thought I would go ahead and read the comments from Kimberly. We've addressed her issues a couple of days. And she wrote again, just to clarify something. The way that I read her previous email was that her sister said her mother had broke her. And she says, I was able to listen. I'm very thankful for the advice. I will set aside time for the Mind Shifters. I asked two of my sisters who I think were there at the time, but neither recall the event. Okay, this is the one that I read yesterday, I believe. When her sister said you broke her, she didn't mean that she had broken their mother, but that the mother had broken her. And she said she is really thankful for your insights. Yeah. So it's just a matter of the way that I read it. I didn't interpret it correctly.
Well, and and the big thing to look at then, it shifts things slightly, and actually that's one of the most common. If you look at the chart on the website of the physiological effects of emotional suppression, you'll see that the first thought disorder that most people buy into is that of you're broken, there's something wrong with you. Seeing as how that comes up, Jean, do you have a copy of that chart handy by any chance? I don't have one at hand here.
I am opening it as we speak so that I could put a link to it on the...
Okay. Do you have a paper one by any chance?
No, but I can print this one off
real
quick.
Okay. So when I talk about, and I just thought I'd run through that chart. We haven't talked about it in quite a while, and it really ties in how body and mind are one, that they cannot be separated. There was a split back, in antiquity where the church decided it wanted the mind and the soul and the world have the body. And so they made up this pretend thing that they were two separate things. But there is no way in the creation that you can separate the mind from the body. And whatever is going on in the body is going on in the mind, and whatever is going on in the mind is going on in the body. I like to use an example of, let's imagine I've got a silver dollar. Gee, one side I've got George Washington, the other side there's, the Lady of Gaudin, whatever her name is. And I say to you, okay, so now there's a head and a tail, right? Oh yes, there's a head and a tail. Well, let's take the head off the coin. At what point, where do you split the coin so that the head comes off and just leaves the tail? There's no such thing. They are one indivisible object with two perspectives. You look from one side and you see a head, you look from the other side, you see a tail. That's precisely what's true about the human body-mind unit. There is absolutely no difference in the two whatsoever. There is no point at which you can say, oh, that's affecting the mind but not the body, or that's affecting the body but not the mind, because they are one indivisible energy structure, and you can't split one off from the other. So if you want to download this chart, Jeannie's put the link in the website or in the notes for today, but you can also just go to whyagain.org, whyagain.org, and look for the physiological effects of emotional suppression. And the space we're designed to live, actually in the Beatitudes, it talks about whose home is in the breath, or in the feminine elemental force that was called Ruka Dekucha in Aramaic. Is this eternal force of active human life or love. And the best definition now I've been able to come up with for life is that life is love flowing through a human cell, human life. And we're designed to live in theos, enthusiasm. Think about the little kid. And, a little kid can get excited about what's in its diaper and the painting it just did on the wall with it. It has no filter on that whatsoever. It goes, look at that piece of art. Enthusiasm, 100%, till somebody comes along with a fist and breaks it down, and the fist may be a message about something about what's wrong with you. Why would you do such a thing? You're broken, you're defective. That's one of the first thought disorders that happens. And when that occurs, when that disintegrative energy is introduced into the human structure, it's locked into tissue and literally creates what we call a chemical disturbance. We call what happens in the cell chemistry. In fact, there is no such thing as chemistry. If you go right back to the basic facts of the things, if you listen to Einstein, Einstein says, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibrations have been so low as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Matter doesn't exist, Einstein tells us. We have this energy system. If you go to the opening words in the book of John, what it says is not in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh, and equate the word there with Yeshua. A total false conflation. What it says is in the beginning was the mind energy, or the willed action, and the mind energy, or the willed action became physiology, became flesh. In other words, every thought you think becomes part of your physiology. Mind and body, which seem to be separate, are in fact a singular object viewed from two different perspectives. And not even an object, but rather a singular energy system. So take that idea of mind energy becoming flesh, and then let's go to Bruce Lipton's cell biologist laboratory, and let's hear him explain it. Oh, when you think of thought, that thing that is non-physical, what we call physical, all of a sudden shows up in what we call the physical, in the realm of our senses, and what appears in the structure is a neuropeptide, a molecule. That molecule circulates around in the structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches, lands on the cell, and inserts itself in the cell. Now, there's some conversation about that. Bruce says it replicates it in the cell. I don't believe it replicates it. When it lands on the antenna, it inserts itself into the cell, would be my take. Fine point, probably doesn't really matter, but and if we were on the inside of the cell watching the neuropeptide. If we could see through the cell wall and we're inside the cell and we're watching the neuropeptide come, it lands on the receptor site, which is just an antenna, and the energy comes into the cell. And what we would say, if we were looking through our normal senses and the extensions of our senses, a microscope and such, we'd say, that's chemistry in the cell. So now literally mind energy has become flesh. So what do you suppose a child is designed and is living in total enthusiasm in the breath, doesn't hold its breath for anything, is tapped into itself as the presence of love, an actual human life? The thought structures go like this. I love life. I'm excited. I get to live in my full power of love, genius, and aliveness. How cool is that? What kind of chemistry do you suppose that's going to create in the cell? It can be pretty cool. And then along comes some goon who doesn't like the painting on the wall, who has all kinds of judgments about the painting on the wall, and when they were a child was beaten half to death for some of the creative things they did. And that parent goes into a rage, much like Dr. Tim was just reading about. What happens to enthusiasm? It shuts down. And thought disorders like, what's wrong with me? I can't tell you there's how many hundreds and hundreds of people I've worked with that no matter what happens, they come up with thoughts like, there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. Self-blame, and along with that, there's guilt and there's shame, and all these degrading thoughts about self. In a general way, what tends to happen with that energy, and I'd offer, here's the beginning of physiological aging, or what we call aging. The introduction of a dis-ease frequency, not a disease. There is no physical disease, but there are dis-ease energies in the physical that create what appear to be anomalies on a cellular level, and we think the cell is physical, so we think it's physical disease, but it's really just a reflection of a particular quality of energy. You know, if I'm sitting watching TV and somebody drives into my driveway with a poorly tuned car, and that signal, that energy field coming off of the poorly tuned engine hits the antenna on my TV set, all of a sudden I'm going to get all kinds of interference in the TV. There are going to be wiggly lines, there are going to be crazy noises, it's going to flip, it's going to roll, it's going to do all kinds of things. Now, I can go in and I can surger the TV, I can drug the TV, I can change this part, that part, this part. I can change everything in the TV. But if I don't get rid of the original offending energy, i.e., I can think my TV's really diseased with all the things that are going on, and if someone goes out and turns the key off in the ignition in that car in the driveway, all of a sudden my TV healed. It's a miracle. Your physiology is no different. I don't care what your disease is. I don't care what your disease is. If there is a disintegrative thought relative to your field, this integrated energy field called a human form is a gathering of energetic patterns that produce this appearance of form. If there are energies introduced into the system that are unlike what supports that form being in integrity, like you're broken, then that energy tends to become locked into the pineal gland, creates a dysfunction. Now, somebody who's got a problem here will go to the doctor and say, doctor, what's wrong with me? And they'll go down and they'll trace it. Say, well, it's something to do with the pineal gland, but, you know, we checked it all and it's physically perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. They'll come back 5 years later and 5 years later and 5 years later and 5 years and 50 years later, they'll go, you've got the ABC pineal disease. Finally, it's distorted the physiology so much that now we say that organ is diseased. But if you were to go in and do a mass forgiveness process on the dis-ease energy stored in the pineal gland from 50 years of cultural insanity, the pineal gland would instantly shift into being as fresh as a newborn babe's. How do you do that? It's called forgiveness. Well, I've been doing forgiveness now for 2 weeks. Why aren't all my diseases fixed? Cleared up, done. Well, let's see. Which of your parents understood forgiveness and worked with and taught you to remove any kind of disintegrative energy and was there to care for you and make sure that disintegrative energies were handled before they ever got to you? Which of your parents was it? Oh, neither of them. Oh, okay. How about brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors? Which of them were there to shield you? And oh, most of them, all of them, you can remember, were into all kinds of thought disorders of their own, their hostility, kind of like that story Dr. Tim was just reading. Oh, and so then let's think about your grandparents. Which of them? Oh, boy, it got worse with my grandparents. He was a drunk. And yeah, just like that story, Dr. Tim. Yeah, a drunk. Yeah, he drank too much. I got hit. We got hit, you know. And what about your great and your great and your? So what you're telling me, you are the end line of the evolution of a system of hostility and fear that would curl the hair on a bald man. And you should be finished with that in 2 weeks. You should have that all cleaned up and done. Well, good luck. Can't tell you how many times over the years I've had people in effect have said, you know, I got $5 in 5 minutes. You know, don't make me work for this. Don't make me spend time. No, I don't want to have to waste. I just want it all fixed yesterday. Doesn't work that way. Maybe a significant number of years before this particular person gets back to that particular thought disorder that you're broken. And then has the skill, once they're aware of it, to access that chemistry in the cell and remove it from the cell. That's why we suggest you go into the practice of the duals. One of the keys to doing that process is holding to the space of conscious, active, present love. Oh, who was the last person you remember in your family system or your community or culture that did that 24/7, 365? Are you willing to take the time to develop the skill to do the work that will allow you to literally reach back and remove that neuropeptide from your pineal gland? Now, of course, if we go back to the chart, the child in enthusiasm loves that, I love life, I'm excited, and then when they get whipped and screamed at and raged at, ends up in quite a bit of pain. So they cry. And what does the culture say to them? The majority of people over the years, when I've asked this question, raise their hand when I say, how many of you ever heard the line, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry for? So what's the next thought disorder for the child that's in pain, that's given up their enthusiasm, is buying the chemistry of I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, and the dysfunction of the pineal gland, and they want to be able to express that pain. What's the next thought disorder? This hurts, and I'm not allowed to feel. And that's accompanied by brash humiliation. I mean, think about in that story Dr. Tim's reading, this young boy is sitting at the table, he's growing, he's wanting to be turned into a man, and here's this drunk sitting here that raps him over the head repeatedly in front of his sisters, in front of his mother, and his neighbor friend that just came over for dinner. Thoughts of humiliation, the energy of humiliation, and that tends to lock into and begin to shut down at the pituitary gland. This is the beginning of going down the ladder of what is called aging and disease. The child, if you just trace, if you just watch them, When that sort of thing happens, they go into an antagonistic state. And they tend to start to develop, they call it the terrible twos. And in that state, they tend to go into things like vengeance and I'll get you, and want to threaten back again, especially somebody who's smaller than them. And if they get beaten for that, then they'll learn that overt hostility is a way to control things. And now it becomes, the thought disorder goes, and I'm going to hurt you. Human life has been pretty much displaced. Enthusiasm, I love life, I'm excited, has been displaced now. And anger takes over. And the energy, the thought disorders that go with the anger now tend to lock into the thyroid gland. It's interesting. If you look not so very long ago, like 60, 70 years ago, if, let's say for some reason, let's say there was some sort of heart problem or lung problem, and they had to take a young child and go in and open their chest. Surgeons found this huge, overgrown, obviously diseased thyroid gland. And a child of 4 or 5 or 6, and they do a thymectomy because the thyroid gland's only about the size of a walnut or an almond. What they've shown is that a 24-hour attack of fear can shrink the thyroid gland by 50%. Remember the stories you heard about, those that were killed on the battlefield, and there was this one guy that didn't have a scratch, didn't have a bullet, and he was as dead as everybody else? That's the impact of intensified fear. And it tends to affect the thyroid gland. So the child in anger, the type of thoughts, and I'm just talking about a trend here, I'm not saying this is exact for everybody, but the trend then becomes this anger, and along with that anger is, I've got to hide my rage or they'll kill me. And the fear that goes with that is just insane. And the anger becomes the medication to anesthetize against the fear. At this point, the anger's been so shut down that it goes into covert hostility, learned deceit. Oh, Mom, I didn't mean to break your favorite new $200 lamp. Forgive me. Covert hostility. When the fear takes over, thought disorders like energetic patterns thinking, which becomes literal chemistry in the cell on the level where we think of chemistry existing. I remember I was in speaking at Unity in Indianapolis, Indiana, and there was a professor there from a local university who taught chemistry, and I was talking about this whole idea around chemistry, and he came up to me after, he said, I teach college level chemistry, and you know what? We really don't have a clue what we're talking about, what's really going on. So the fear thoughts, the thought disorders become things like, I'm terrified that I'm going to be hurt again. And you know what I mixed up there? It wasn't the thyroid they're doing, it was thymectomies. It was the thymus gland, which controls the immune system. That would shrink 50% with a 24-hour fear attack. So once one is bought into that terrified space, and you look at a lot of churchianity, and so many people in churchianity are living in this next step, and it's called propitiation. Kind of a strange word that not many people are acquainted with. T.S. Eliot was a poet, and he wrote in a single line a definition of propitiation that you'll never forget. And that is, what he said was, "'Tis the highest treason to do the right thing for the wrong reason." It's propitiation. That's covert hostility, learned deceit, based in fear and terror, and then doing the right thing, but being in a diseased state and motivated by an internally dissociated disease to do the right thing. And so oftentimes people are out there doing the right thing, and the whole time they're reinforcing disease processes within themselves because they have not been properly disciplined. You know, we live in a culture that tells us that, child, you spare the rod and you spoil the child, as though the rod were something to beat a kid with rather than something to lean on for support. And the root of the word discipline is disciple. It means properly taught. It doesn't mean properly beat up. If you can't properly teach someone the reason behind you want to do the right thing, then you beat them into submission. They do the right thing for the wrong reason. And every time they do the right thing, underneath it, the energy under the surface in the heart or the unconscious is disease. That's why what led the scriptures to say, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. Take care of the unconscious part of your mind and clean it out. Because if you don't, you can be doing all the right things in your head and in the external world and destroying yourself as you do it, if you're living in propitiation. And it's one of the most common things going on in the world today. At this point, this person is probably subventilating 80% or more of the time. They don't breathe. You know, this is a stage where I've heard people kind of like it's a big laugh. Oh, yeah, I remember my parents used to tell me that I hold my breath until I turned blue and passed out. That's an extreme effort to shut down awareness of what's going on inside. Holding the breath like that is an extreme effort to not feel and not deal with what's being put into the structure as chemistry. And that tends to lead people to sympathy. It's a huge business. I mean, billions of dollars. I was in a store last week looking for a card, and I was appalled. They didn't have one card under $5. They had a little piece of cardboard in an envelope, $5. The sympathy business. What is sympathy? Well, I have pain just like yours. Let's intensify our pain by suffering together. Negative identification with another situation. You know, if you have someone who's lost a loved one and you're going to the funeral, don't take your pain and pour it out with them or reinforce the energy with them. Deal with your pain. Forgive your pain. And if you're going to go to that funeral home, go as a space of conscious, active, present love. They're able to hold the space and bring solace and healing to the person that perhaps is suffering. Bring the state of your human life, that conscious, active, present love, that even stands with enthusiasm in the presence of death. The next step down the ladder of sympathy, now that the thought disorders are well ingrained, deeply ingrained, habitual, next comes grief to affect and shut down the pancreas and the adrenals. Remember back about 25 or so years ago, we had a woman that came to Heartland to be on the support team. She was on the team for a year, and everybody always took care of making sure she was well fed, because if she didn't eat, she was a terror. She had a blood disorder or a sugar disorder. And she'd go hypoglycemic, and when she'd go hypoglycemic, she'd bite your head off. So if she started to get testy, somebody'd go grab some food and give it to her. The day we did a breath workshop and she touched into the pain, the grief that was unresolved for her over the fact that the love of her life, her husband, was in a car accident and was given blood tainted with AIDS and died. The day she did that breath session, the day she opened that content from her mind and was able to look it square in the face and process through it, that was the end of her sugar disorder. It didn't matter. She could fast. We usually did a 3-day fast at the beginning of each intensive. She couldn't do that. Once we went through that, she could do that with no problem whatsoever. It was easy. So grief, thought disorders like, I'm sad, I'm overburdened, and I'm hurt. And that's as a result of my own unconscious self-imposition of dissociated pain. And that's what tends to shut down the pancreas and the adrenals. So blood sugar is rampant throughout our world. And the most common complaint, I'm told, people going to medical doctors is, I'm tired, I don't have any energy. The adrenals are shot because they've been overloaded with this pain. These thought disorders. Now, over time, these things are going to have a physiological effect where somebody with their microscope can look and go, oh, we see it now. Before it becomes physiological, and that takes years. They call it aging. So you're getting old. No, you're not getting old. You've been carrying this toxic load for so long, your structure's starting to break down. There's no such thing as aging. That's a fraud. It's the load being carried on the tissue that causes the tissue to look like it's aging, and the fact that it happens over time, it's easy to go, oh, you see, it's time that did that. Well, if time does that, then everybody would have to have the same diseases over time. If this is, oh, that's just a disease of aging, well, everybody who's, it's a cute story about the guy that goes to the doctor, and doctor's looking at his leg and got a problem with it. He explains all the symptoms, what's going on. Doc looks at him, just kind of says, well, your leg's just getting old. He says, but doc, it's the same age as the other one. It hasn't got to do with time. It's got to do with the assaults. And the primary assaults, yes, of course, there are physiological interactions. You bump into something, you're in an accident, cancel the thought, and those things occur. But the assault, the main assault, comes with the mind energy. This list of thought disorders. And if you print off this chart, you'll see on the right-hand side, you can see the arrow going right down into what's called aging and disease. It's learned, self-imposed, buying into mind energy that is the head of the coin, destroying the tail. Now, when somebody gets to the point where the pancreas adrenals, they're so weak, they're so burdened, that now it's kind of like helpless and hopeless, apathy. Oh, well, it's hopeless. There's nothing meaningful I can do. Why are they doing this to me again? I'm hopeless. It's helpless. I'm a victim. I'm alone. This tends to impact and destroy the spleen. We're just about to the bottom where someone's getting ready to check out. The next step is just mass unconsciousness. And the thoughts go like, I don't know, I have no idea, I'm in a fog, I don't understand. And this shuts down the reproductive organs. You look at the massive numbers of people who cannot conceive, and you see a mass impact of that kind of burden being carried on the whole organic system. So one who's buying into the thought disorders is dropping down the pathway. One who wants to heal is going to have to move up the pathway. And if you print off the chart on the left-hand side, you'll see the arrow going up from the bottom up, and now we're looking at youthing and healing. What's that going to look like? It's going to look like, I don't know, then I'm going to do some research, I'm going to do some learning and some understanding, I'm going to build the brain cells so I do know. Yes, I now have some tools. There's something I can do about it. Now you're going to start to get more and more symptoms going as you start to throw that energy off. That sadness, that grief is going to have to process out of the structure. And all of the thought disorders, all of the energetic patterns of pain are going to have to be removed. You're going to have to reclaim your power from turning it over to those who forced you. And as you learn to do the right things for the right reason, you give up propitiation and you stand as a space where you do what's in harmony with truth and what's in harmony with love, no matter what anybody else is saying. If anyone's going to countenance their mind energy, their thoughts of terror, of having been terrorized, oftentimes by a power person, by a parent. They're going to dip, there's going to be a tendency to dip in and out of each of these thought disorders as they're cleaned up, especially if they're generational patterns, which usually they are. There's going to come a point where people are going to get to confront their anger and stop playing the game of blame that their anger is about someone else. When anger comes up, instead of, oh, I'm looking at Harry, he's the reason I'm angry. I'm never going to think about myself or question why I'm angry, what my anger is, and that my anger belongs to me and is being produced by my physiology and is destroying me. People who will never confront that will never heal. They will tend to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into pain, and it will be unresolvable. If you have anger come up and you let go of thinking about Harry and you stop and you go, here I am with my anger again. Maybe I need to stop lashing out at the people around me. I wonder why I've destroyed so many relationships. Oh, no, it was all about them. It was they that did that. It wasn't me. Yeah, right. Sure. There comes a point of taking responsibility. And be careful that responsibility doesn't go into self-blame. This isn't about blame. It's just about being honest with yourself and recognizing, oh, I see what I've done. And only when you can come into conscious relationship with what you've done can you change the thought disorders behind it. And there'll come a point where you have to give up the blame game and the thought disorders of rage and the belief that someone else is going to harm you. Coming back to feeling, letting go of the unconsciousness, letting go of the trauma-based interactions that happened in early life allows the load to be taken off of the pituitary, the pineal, and get back to the truth where you've made a space in your physiology for your true essence, which is love, to come into expression through your physiology rather than trying to come through all these thought disorders that are stored in tissue structure, right down to including the genes that need to be cleaned out, because the thought disorders have been going on for generations and generations. Remember that story of the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years? And that was not a story about this group of people who were lost in a 35 square mile area for 40 years. That's ridiculous. These people knew about astronomy. Look at their writings. They understood where the sun rose and where the sun set. If they'd wanted to get out of the desert, if it were about being in a hot, sandy place where it was about 35 square miles, the size of that desert, they'd have gotten up in the morning and started to follow the sun east, and they'd have been out of there within a couple of days. But remember what had to happen in order to get out of the desert. And the desert is just to get out of the state of unconsciousness. The very bottom thing on this chart that we're talking about, the last thing is the unconsciousness. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm in a fog. I don't understand. That's the desert. What had to happen to get out of the desert? Read that passage. It's a metaphor for the journey of life. And you remember what they said is the old generation had to die off. That didn't mean everybody in old physical bodies had to physically die. The root of the word generation is genari. It means cause. You have to go in and lift every thought disorder off of every organ in your structure. Every thought disorder of every generation will leave your structure available to be fueled by active present love, and all interference patterns are gone. All of a sudden, the car out there in the driveway with the poorly tuned engine is shut off, and the picture miraculously clears up. The physical diseases disappear. The mental, the emotional diseases, the addictions disappear. But you have to develop the skill of accessing your own unconscious dynamics. You have to quit your religion. And for anybody who's living down at the bottom of this chart, They are card-carrying members of the one-world religion of blame. It's all somebody else's fault. When they're in pain, when they're in turmoil, when they're in trauma, there are whole conversations about somebody else. It's not about themselves. You got to learn to talk about me, yourself. And as you let go of those thought disorders, you take the load off of tissue. You take the load off of the mind. You take the load off of the emotions. And now there's room for Christ to return to earth. That's not a religious idea. The word Christ there represents the mind of love in you. Remember Paul talked about the mind of Christ, your hope of glory. It wasn't the mind that Yeshua had. It's the same mind that he used, the mind of love, but it was the mind of love in him that he used. It's the mind of love in you that you need to use, not the mind of thought disorders and generational patterns and cultural insanity. So coming up the other side of the chart is youthing and healing. And you get back to, I love life, I'm excited. In the awesome. When you start letting go of those thought disorders, I mean, I watch so many people in so much pain and turmoil. It's like, but you have a human life. What are you talking about? What are you whining about? You have a life. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. But burdened with generations and generations and generations of unresolved pain and trauma, living in that desert is a tough place to live. That's living in the land of unconscious co-creation. You know, we have a workshop called On Creating Consciously. And it's all about the principles of how to create your life consciously rather than out of those unconscious dynamics. And it takes adapting to and doing your work. Now, a lot of people say, well, I'm too busy. Oh, okay, that's fine. Suffer and die. That's, that's the pathway. That's what happens. That's why they suggested tithing. I suggest to people that they tithe. And tithing, a lot of Christianity, tithing is about giving somebody money. That's not about what I'm talking about. I like to use the acronym TIME, T-I-M-E. Time, yes. You get to the point where you spend 2.4 hours a day doing your work. Intelligence. You start to use your original intelligence, not mine. I can be here to support you, offer you some, been there, done that, here's what you can do about it. But ultimately, it's your original intelligence that we're here to support awakening. So time, intelligence, money. Yes, dedicate 10% of your income to what supports you spiritually and doing your spiritual work. And then the last in the acronym is energy. Yeah, put 2.4 hours a day of your original energy. Not, I did my 14-hour day today and I came home and I'm exhausted and so I'm going to go and have a nap. meditate for an hour. No, it's your original vital energy that you want to put into this. Sure, everybody has to earn a living. You have to dedicate that energy there, but put that or some of that original energy into your internal work and stand in the space of willingness to process through whatever it is that the thought disorders that have resulted in the situations in your business life, in your financial life, in your relationship life, in your physical health, your mental health, your emotional, whichever arena it's in. Invest in that. Invest in yourself. So again, if you're tuned in late, I suggest that you tap into the chart on our website. Go to whyagain.org. The physiological effects of emotional suppression. You can print that off free. And at the bottom of the page, there's a note about what we call, so people can comprehend it, the non-being mind. And the non-being mind is the self that we think we are that's based in hostility and fear. Once active present love by these thought disorders is knocked out of one's life, they're dead. You might remember with Yeshua, there's a man who's boy, I like what you're doing. Yes, I'm going to come with you, but first I need to go bury my mother and my father. That didn't mean his mother and father just died and he was going to dig a grave. In that culture, the oldest son had an obligation to take care of his parents till their death and burial. So he was putting, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time. I have other obligations. And what did Yeshua say to him? Let the dead bury the dead. Until one is awake in their physiology as active present love, they are dead to their human lives. And once that death of being occurs, physical death takes approximately, plus or minus 100 years. 90 years is a pretty good shot for most people. And I'd offer death is a result of purposely instilled, unconsciously driven, non-human insanity based in fear and or hostility. Healing, to return to our natural state, love and enthusiasm, is the systematic ongoing removal or forgiveness of everything unlike your true nature and the return to being 24/7, 365. It's not only possible, but inevitable for every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And youthing is climbing up and out of the insanity. That's the last paragraph on the chart.
And we have two
so that probably will, I was just going to say, that'll probably stimulate a few questions. So, Miss Jeannie, you've got some hands up. Let's say hello.
We do. The first one's area code 757. I believe this is Dan. You're on the air.
Hey there.
Hey, Dan. How do you be, young man?
I'm doing great. I'm I'm cooking some carrots and celery. I actually I ended up getting COVID a little bit after we did that still point session, and
Ouch.
Stuff's been weird, but
bless your heart.
Good and healing though. Thank you. So
carrying on doing your work and keep breathing.
Yeah, a lot. And I was doing a lot of worksheets this morning and getting excited about it. And then I thought, okay, I know what's coming,
Next layer?
But yeah, something's going on. And because I was getting real enthusiastic about it and excited and it all made sense. And I called a friend to talk about it. And by the time I called, I was starting to feel a little bit kind of crummy and confused and dizzy. And so
all right.
It is. But
hey,
I did a worksheet yesterday that really kind of, I don't know what the word is. It felt powerful to me. So I wanted to share the story, if that's all right.
Please do. Tell me about it. What's happening?
So when I was a little kid, I have memories of kind of what I was like, the joyful, uninhibited, expressive, loving, that energy we talk about. And there's a story of I was about 3 or 4 or whatever. We went to me and my parents, we went to a Chinese restaurant and we got food, and they had fortune cookies. So I understood the concept of a fortune cookie, but of course I couldn't read. I was 3. So I got my fortune, and they were saying, "What does it say? What does it say, Danny?" And I couldn't read, and I said, "It says, calm down, Danny." So I was keyed into I'm supposed to calm down. I'm supposed to keep this stuff under wraps. I need to suppress it. I need to push it down. I understood the assignment that it was, I was embarrassing and creating, shame just by being an uninhibited, joyful little kid. And
yeah, that's it. It's
curious.
Crazy, isn't it?
So my goal on the worksheet, I realized I've carried this goal for, I guess, I'm 35. I was about 3, at least 32 years of calm down, Danny. The goal is to calm down, suppress, control everything, push it down, make sure I don't embarrass myself, avoid humiliation, avoid humiliating other people. And that just, that
Talk
was sort
about
of
shutting down the life force.
Right. It's like the direct mission, just in my own words, of, calm down, turn it off, stop it.
So a good mind shifter for that one would be something along the lines of, it's safe and healing and people approve of me and love it when I'm in total enthusiasm and excitement.
Let me write that down. Or I can just sort of remember the gist of it.
It's safe and healing. Jeannie's probably already got it written down.
Well, you went a little bit fast. It's safe and healing and people love it when I'm in total enthusiasm is what I got.
Love it and approve of me when I'm in total enthusiasm. I would do it. See what that resonates. That might take you back through some specifics where other correlated thought disorders were implanted, or you bought into them, and give you a chance to see where there's perhaps some other work to be done.
Well, so after I did that, I start, and I want to give time for the other person too that's calling in, but I started kind of inhabiting this, like remembering the faces and the experiences of when I was in elementary school, remembering that whole environment and
right.
The people I felt teased by, felt not approved of, and so that brought up a whole other layer that I've kind of superimposed onto my life today of trying to get people to like me, trying to get power over other people as thinking that other people hold my self-esteem in a way.
Well, it sounds like you're really right on track with your work, my friend.
Yeah, I guess so. It feels good. Then it goes into feeling scary. And I just wanted to ask a quick question I forgot about. You gave me two mind shifters coming out of the still point session we did last time. And
right.
Are those, and I think I probably asked then, but those are kind of, you can just sort of work on at any time, right? Like it doesn't have to be an hour at a time. It can just be sit down for 10 minutes and do it, and then sit down the next day, or do it for 2 hours or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And what I suggest is, if it's something that, you know what's really keying into a major issue, it's something that's really something you seriously need to work on, that's when you want to set aside a given, I'm going to take out a block of 2 hours, I'm going to turn my cell phone off, and I'm just going to write. Or if it's, something that's really a significant issue in your life, you might take 3 or 4 hours, block it off. And what I've found is, when you use the mind shifter, the more time you'll give yourself, the deeper you can drill down into those unconscious dynamics and get it out on the page.
Yeah, well, it's feeling like all the stuff that's coming up is feed into like major issues. So I'm realizing, and I'll share this and then I'll stop. But I mean, so then it goes into the, my classmates. There was a lot of, when this is again, little kid, 5, 6, 7, rivalry with the boys and girls, and I felt rejected and humiliated and held in contempt by the girls in my class. And it's like, I'm still carrying that around. I'm trying to get adult women to approve of me today to make up for feeling ashamed of myself as a little boy when I was 6. It's like that energy is still going of other humans I haven't seen in 30 years that I'm unconsciously blaming them for my low self-esteem and feeling humiliated and not included, as if they have to do something in order for me to heal, and they don't. It's all in me. So I'm kind of grateful that it's come up.
Awesome. Well, that's where, applying forgiveness to the thought disorders you hold about yourself, and that goes right back to that original power person thing of you're broken. Whatever the variation on the theme of you're broken is. And in your case, it was that calm down, Danny, is the message of, there's something wrong with you. And I mean, for a kid of 3 to just be out there, like we have this social structure that says, oh, there's a bad parent if this kid, wow. To me, when our granddaughter's out there and rocking, it's like, go for it, girl. And if embarrassment comes up for me, guess who's got a problem? I do. It's the adult that has a problem.
Right. So my parents didn't have that tools or awarenesses, and and it bled on to me, I guess. Something happened.
Well, remember, in the power person dynamic, three things happen for a power person dynamic to be installed in a child's mind, and it's usually something that comes from a parent. And the three things are that the adult, the parent, wasn't functioning out of love, they had more power over the child than the child did, and the child thought of it as survival. When that occurs, literally, as a child, the child's energy field is just like sliced wide open, and the child becomes like a sponge. Every energy in the environment is simply like a sponge, just sucked in. If mom or dad's sitting there in rage and embarrassment, and that dynamic opens in the child, then that energy of rage and embarrassment becomes part of the foundational thought system and energy system of the child until that's forgiven.
Yeah, and I know I've gone through a lot of my life, doing some level of work, but sort of still blaming my mother, like almost feeling like she's in my, I used to have this thought, she's in my nervous system, she's in my physiology, why won't she leave me alone? And it kind of makes sense, but it's still today wanting to let go of holding her in blame going on in me today.
Right. So when all of that occurred as a child, the energy of the parent was simply there. The child drew it in, and it creates that kind of an impression. One of the reasons why there are only, once one has this power person dynamic installed in the mind, there are only three behaviors possible, and they relate directly to that power person experience, and the behavior depends on the level of stress one is under. When there's no stress, we'll do whatever we did to get along with our power person. When stress builds, we'll shift into the automatic decision system, kicks in the mind, and kicks us over into doing whatever we did to resist and survive with our power person. And then and to me this would relate to your thinking of, gee, that she's in there. It's like that power person was our God.
Right.
And so when the stress is up and the chips are down, when I'm ultra stressed, what I'm going to do is look into my unconscious and go, what did God do when the stress was up and the chips were down? And that's the behavior that
right.
I do. So the third level of behavior when I become ultra stressed is I'll do what my power person did that I hated the most, because that's how they won over me. And in that state, I'm looking to win. I'm unconscious, and I just go, oh, okay. So most often it's a thing that people said, boy, I'm never going to be like that with my kids or with my spouse, or and it's exactly what takes over.
Right.
And that's the reason for doing the power person worksheet that comes in the codependence worksheet. There are two different specifics that work in that arena, but yeah, you ultimately want to get that cleared out. And as long as that power person dynamic is still, let's say, alive and well inside, then when one is in relationship with someone and they do a behavior that violates a goal that they held for their power person, then that person that they're in relationship with, this is kind of like the coup de grace in understanding the power person dynamic. Now, this person I'm in relationship with, I put in my power person file, and everything that I experience of them has to filter through the way I experience my power person. So I'm actually no longer in relationship with that person. It's like there's a saying in the culture that honors this, although it's rarely understood what's really going on. But everybody's heard the saying, "Oh, the honeymoon is over." What does that mean?
Right.
what it means is the person I'm in relationship with did something that violated a goal that I held, a serious goal I held from my power person, and now I've locked them into my power person file. I'm actually no longer in relationship with them. Everything that I experience with them is filtered through all the dynamics of my power person, and I'm right back in full-blown relationship with my power person in my mind, and I project that internal image in my mind onto them, and I think that I'm still in relationship with them when, in fact, I'm not even in relationship with them anymore. I may be in the same house, in the same bed, blah, 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 but I'm back in relationship with my power person. And that's where so much, again, that's where the honeymoon is over happens.
Yeah. And like that thing of, because I'm going to recreate the whole situation again so that we get it right this time and meet my goal, not realizing that if I create the whole situation again, I'm going to be miserable.
That's why the core of forgiveness is canceling goals. The genius of Yeshua coming up with that is the core of forgiveness. And the way that you access the unconscious dynamic to clean it up is by canceling the goal is just genius when you understand how the mind works. Yeah. Well, that's it, sir. I'm delighted you're on track and rock and roll.
Thank you. I am sorry to the person that was in line that I spoke too long.
Well, you didn't speak too long. He said
that was absolutely fine.
You were perfectly on track, and tomorrow it'll be his turn, and if somebody else is waiting, then we'll spend time with him until it's complete, and each person, when they're here, they get 100% of the attention. So you're right on track.
On Monday.
Absolutely no apology needed.
Awesome.
All right, my friend. Well, we're going to get cut off by the Blog Talk Radio any second now, so I'm just going to say thanks for sharing those dynamics and bring that up. That was a great completion point for the physiological effects of emotional suppression. Thanks, I appreciate it.